Welcome to part three. Here, the focus is going to be on fashion, and there are high schools that I've been in, at least. There are three different approaches that they took to student dress, student fashion. One is to have uniforms, and the high school I went to, Holy Cross High School, we had a uniform. We were made to wear a blazer. Ninth, 10th graders had one. I think ours was green, and then upperclassmen had a different color. When I was an upperclassman, I think we wore navy blue. With the HC emblazoned uh, on the breast pocket. Uh, and then we could wear any shirt, collared shirt that we could wear a tie with. Couldn't wear a golf shirt. Had to be buttoned down with a tie. Dress pants, no jeans or anything along those lines. And then shoes, you couldn't wear sneakers. So that was our uniform. Dominican Commercial, the first school I taught at, the girls had to wear a uniform. Other schools I taught at, the public schools some of the other schools that I taught at. So, for example, St. Mary's, when I taught there, they didn't have a uniform. They had a dress code that kids had to follow. Had to wear, they're all boys. They had to wear, jacket and tie. And like us at Holy Cross, that was very similar, except it wasn't a uniform blazer. They could wear whatever blazer, sport coat, suit jacket they wanted to wear. Tie, no jeans, no sneakers. Uh, at Holy Trinity High School, where I was the dean, they also did not have a uniform. They had a relatively strict dress code. It was boys and girls. This dress code was fairly complex, loaded with loopholes, and it was a constant source of problem for me with kids being sent down to see me because they were not in proper dress, and then I had to kind of go through it with them and well, is that in the code? That what was that? Oh, this fits that. It was it was nightmarish. And then the public schools I taught at, of course, very minimal uh, dress codes, very minimal, and kids were pretty much free to dress however they want. So you had these three different levels of strictness: the uniform, the fairly strict code, and then the very relaxed dress codes that you would have at public schools. And all these kind of presented different challenges. So let me go back to when I was a high school student, and we had to wear the. I remember when we first got the letter from Holy Cross about dress, and then we had to buy the uniform blazer, and we could opt to also buy what they call, and I forget this phrase, the plaid harmonizing tie, which I might have gotten initially, and I might have even worn it once or twice, but we quickly got away from the plaid harmonizing tie. And so, we were able to kind of dress, the way we wanted, but we just had to have that uniform blazer on. So, I got a lot of ties, different ties. We used to go to a place in Manhattan called Tie City where you could purchase ties. I think they were $1. They might have been they might have been three for $1. I don't know. These weren't the most expensive ties. But they had the whole store was just ties. It was Tie City. So whenever we went into the city, and we would go in, once, twice a month, I guess, and we would stop at Tie City, grab a couple of new ties. It was either that, buy the tie for $1, or a couple of ties for $1, or we could have had lunch at Tad's Steakhouse, also in the Times Square area in Manhattan, where you get a full steak baked potato, for $1.49. even then we knew he didn't really want a $1.49 steak and baked potato, so we would get the ties at Pie City. And so that would be, one way to kind of give us a sense of self by wearing these different stylish ties from Tie City. And then, of course, the pants. You wear whatever kind of dress pants you wanted to buy, and very stylish in those days were plaid pants. So most of the guys wore. Some of the guys wore. I certainly did from time to time, not all the time, but from time to time, would wear a pair of nice plaid pants. And then the shoes. Three basic types of shoe that I wore, and that a lot of the guys at Holy Cross wore. One was the penny loafers, always always popular. Uh, I also liked wingtips, oxblood colored wingtips. But my favorite was in those days were the suede saddle shoes. I mean, that was it. So get the picture. The blazer, the nice tie city 99-cent tie or whatever it was, a pair of plaid pants, and then of course the suede saddle shoes. So we were styling. But you only wore those blazers. Remember, freshman, sophomore year, then junior, senior year, you got a different blazer. So there was a bit of a tradition at Holy Cross that at the end of sophomore year, the sophomores would rip each other's blazers, just tear them apart. You didn't have to wear them anymore. Next year you weren't gonna save these things. You're just gonna throw them out. I mean, you could imagine what these things look like. You wore them in school every day. You left them in your locker. You never brought them home. They were never cleaned. I mean, it was just you just threw it on when you got to school. So uh, we would rip each other's blazers. And for some reason, my blazer became quite the target, and it was ripped from you had the vent slit in the back. It was ripped apart from there. The pocket was in the front. The breast pocket with the HC on it was ripped off. My sleeve, they yanked my sleeves off. So now I got this blazer that's falling apart. I actually had to staple the sleeves back on so I could still wear it. So it was a mess. And one of my teachers, I forget which one was, told me, "Hey, you go see Brother Ellis." Now, Brother Ellis was the Holy Cross version of Brother Roy, if you remember from the last one. This was a tough guy. You didn't want to mess with Brother Ellis. I mean, he was a big guy, 6'4" or something. He used to play football at Notre Dame. He was a big guy, and he was, again, with Holy Cross. So you would get beaten up. So now I'm sent down to him, and I'm fearing the worst. This guy's going to beat me or something. And he called everybody Chief or Chiefy. So he said, "Hey, Chiefy, what happened to your jacket?" And I said, "Well, brother," because I was about to rat people. I said, "You know what happened? It got stuck in my locker. It got kind of shut when I shut the locker. It got shut in there, and I couldn't get it out. So I had to kind of yank it. And when I yanked it, it got all messed up." So he looks at me like, "Oh, really?" Like he's an idiot. So I'm waiting now for what's the punishment going to be. Uh, and this was a guy who used to give kids whacks. He called them with a big wooden paddle. And so sometimes, you hear guys tell me he gave me a choice. He said I could have 10 whacks, right on my butt, uh, or, and it's kind of, looking back, it's, well, okay, or you can take your pants down and you can get 5 instead of 10 on your bare butt. Okay, so I'm thinking, is this going to be my choice? I'm certainly not going to pull my pants down. So he says, Chief, go there in my closet, and there's a couple of blazers in there. Take one, take one of them out, and get rid of the one that you're wearing, and you'll wear this one, for the rest of the year. It was like maybe a week left in the school year or so. So okay, so I go in the closet, and these things they're gigantic. They're huge. So I had to put on this kind of clown blazer and wear that for the rest of the time. But no other punishment, no detention, no wax, no nothing. So I was okay, but fine. No problem. Thank you very much. So I had to wear that. So that was the end uh, of the sophomore Blazers. But we were a stylish bunch. Uh, Maureen, my wife, asked me to talk a little bit about the proms that we went to. Uh, I married my high school sweetheart. In case you don't know that, looking at this. So we went to my prom, and we also went to her prom. She went to All Saints High School in Brooklyn. So we went to her prom. So there's a couple of here's a couple of shots of the proms. So in the first picture, it is a picture of my prom. So Maureen and I are all the way at the end to the right, and you could see very stylish top hat, tails, ascot. I was just a kid, but I knew how to dress. And next to me is Eddie Sawchuk. Eddie Sawchuk wearing the I would argue never stylish blue. I don't know if it was velvet, crushed velvet or velour, whatever it was. It looked like a lounge singer. And so that was Eddie. Next to Eddie is my good friend Mike, who I'm going to talk about in a later part. But Mike, very straight laced, wearing that standard, never out of style, timeless black tuxedo. And then next to Mike is Chris, who I introduced last time, the Cookie Monster. There's Chris, and we were wearing the same tux, tails, ascot, but he didn't wear his hat for the picture because he had that headband on for some reason. I don't know why. But that was Chris in the headband, and then next to Chris in the white evening jacket, looking like Humphrey Bogart in the Maltese Falcon, uh, or in Casablanca. I guess better in Casablanca was McDermott, and I tell you the truth, I don't remember his first name. But that was the first picture that you saw. Second picture, we're at Maureen's prom. I'm at the other end of the table. The two of us are at the other end of the table. I still wearing the tails, but now I'm not wearing the ascot. I'm wearing a white bow tie instead. Still stylish, certainly. And you notice the girls in both pictures. I mean, the girls were just lovely, uh, just stunning. And then there were us. And I'm standing next to this guy from the Navy. I have no idea who he was. The other two guys, I had no idea who they were. They were the dates of two of Maureen's friends at the end of the table, Annie and Linda. I'm not quite sure who the girl sitting next to Maureen was, who was with the guy from the Navy. So that was her prom. And then the third picture is just the two of us. Uh, and that picture was actually taken at the Copacabana. We went to the Copacabana after the prom. That was the club that we went to. And we were entertained by none other than Al Green, who was wonderful. So that was some of the prom fashions from 1972. This was the spring of 1972. So a little bit about fashion when I was a student in high school and how we dressed. Now, the first school that I taught at, of course, was Dominican Commercial, and Dominican Commercial, as I mentioned, had girls had uniforms, blouses, skirts. I don't know if there was. I think there might have been a top that they had to wear. I don't remember. But what I do remember is that the skirt lengths, the style of skirt length was changing. I started there in March of 1978, and I was there through January 1979. So I was there for that pretty much a year. And what I noticed is that the junior girls, because I taught juniors and I taught freshmen, and that the junior girls, when I started in the spring of 78, wore their skirts short. The mini skirt. They wore their skirts short. The freshman girls wore their skirts longer. They wore their skirts right around the knee. And this is March, so they've been in school for several months. So it wasn't that they were freshmen. Uh, so we had this kind of shift that was going on, which I thought was kind of interesting. The mini skirts were kind of starting to go a little bit out of style. We were starting to get those maxi skirts and things along, things along those lines. So that was happening, which reminds me of the old Woody Allen joke. I forget which movie it was from, but he was talking. He was asked about whether he believes in God, and he said that, well, if God existed, the miniskirt never would have been just a fad, which I thought was kind of interesting. Later, when he was asked the same question in another movie, I forget which one. I think it might have been Sleeper. Uh, he asked if he believes in God, and he said, "Well, you know what? I believe that there's a general intelligence to the universe, with the exception, of course, of certain parts of New Jersey," which also I thought was somewhat prescient. But again, I digress. So that was a little bit about Holy Cross in the 70s and Dominican Commercial High School at the end of the 1970s. And so now I go from these uniforms to St. Mary's Boys High School, where you have a dress code without uniforms, and a dress code was exactly like the dress code that I experienced at Holy Cross, except it didn't have the uniform blazer. The kids could wear whatever jacket they wanted, so the kids were free to wear whatever they wanted. But the kids there, the boys there, for whatever reason, they all kind of dressed almost identically. The by far the most popular jacket to wear was a corduroy blazer, either tan or brown. Corduroy blazer. They wore plaid shirts, and in the cooler weather, it was plaid flannel shirts with a tie on. And the typical kid just left the tie and the jacket in their locker. So they would come in the morning. The tie was already tied. They'd put it over their head, cinch it up, put on their jacket. No tie city for these kids. They were wearing the same tie day after day, for the most part. Uh, and then their pants, again, no uniform, but they all kind of opted for corduroy Levi's. They couldn't wear corduroy jeans, but they could wear corduroy Levi's. So they all, I say all, overwhelmingly so, they wore corduroy Levi's. And then for shoes, they liked the construction boots, laced loosely, kind of flopping on their feet. And that's the way these guys dressed, not the stylish group that we were back at Holy Cross with our saddle shoes, our plaid pants, and our tie city repertoire of ties. So that was St. Mary's, and so they didn't have a uniform, but they might as well have had one because they all kind of dressed the same anyway. Another Catholic school that I was at was Holy Trinity, and Holy Trinity, of course, that's where I was the dean. That's where they had these I say just absolutely ridiculous dress code. It was several pages long, and it had all sorts of different vagaries in it, and it was constant arguing. This is this within the dress code? Is that within the dress code? The girls' skirts couldn't be more than I think it was 2 inches above their knees. Oh, what am I supposed to do? So take out a ruler and have the teenage girl stand up with her skirt and then put the ruler. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. Now, the one thing that wasn't covered in the dress code that maybe should have been was those gold teeth that kid pulled out and started a fight. But I do remember one time I'm walking to my office after making my rounds around the building, getting kids in trouble. I hated this, but in any event, that was my job. That's why I only lasted there for a year, and I had to leave. Uh, there's a nun waiting for me, and this particular nun, I forget her name, but she was really nice. We would joke around. She was friendly. She was older. Uh, and she said, "Tony, I have a girl sitting in your office." I put her there. I put her there because of her skirt. She's a senior girl, and she was wearing there's a quote now from the nun. She was wearing her skirt as a belt. Oh, Jesus. Okay. All right. All right, sister. Kind of short, right? Yeah, yeah, like a belt, she said. Okay. All right. So I go into the office, and there's this high school senior girl sitting there, nervous as hell. I didn't know who she was, which is a good thing. This was getting toward the end of the year now, and I hadn't met her, which means that she had never gotten into trouble with me. She never got sent out of class. She never got in any trouble. She was a nice, sweet kid. And there she is, and she's all nervous. Oh my God, I'm in the dean's office. I've never been in the dean's office before. What's he going to do to me? And I said, "Why are you here?" Just like that. And I always like to let kids just kind of talk because sometimes they give you all sorts of information that you didn't know. So she said, "Oh, sister brought me down here because she said that my skirt was too short." But as you can see, she stands up, and the skirt was I guess, at the proper length. Says, "You know what happens? You know what happens, Mr. Scarnati, is when you sit down and you're wearing a skirt, it tends to ride up on you a little bit." So I think that's what must have happened. It kind of rode up a little bit, and it was more than 2 inches above my knee. I said, "Oh, really? That's okay." So she's all nervous. So I said, "Fine. Hey, look, wear your skirt like you're supposed to wear it. Don't roll it up. Don't pull it up. Wear it like you're supposed to wear it. There's not much time left, and you'll be done." So I sent her. I didn't get her into any trouble. I just sent her on her way. So that was Holy Trinity, and the dress code of Holy Trinity was just nightmarish. So we move from Holy Trinity. Now we're at excuse me. Let me go back. Let me talk about the public schools that I was in, that where you didn't have a dress code. In the public schools, we had uh, kids could dress pretty much as they wanted to. So I'm going to start with Newtown High School. Newtown High School in Elmhurst, Queens. That was the school with the very diverse population: black kids, Hispanic kids, all sorts of kids from everywhere. Pretty much every corner of the planet, we had kids at Townsend Harris High School. Excuse me, at Newtown High School. And you know, kids were free to dress as they wanted to dress. So I was exposed for the first time to kids being able to dress any way they wanted to dress. And we had some odd dressing, like, this particular kid. Flavor Flav was big at the time, I guess, as I recall. And this kid must have been a Flavor Flav fan. Now, he didn't dress full Flavor Flav, but he did like to wear the big clock on his chest, hanging from a chain. So I thought that was pretty funny. But no, he wore it, and he wore it just about every day. He came to class with the big clock around his neck. I don't know that the clock ever had the right time, but there it certainly was. Now, one of the rules that you had at Newtown, and you had it across all city schools, was the kids weren't allowed to wear hats. This was a big no-no. You can't wear a hat in school. You could pretty much dress however you want, but a hat, baseball cap, any kind of hat, you can't wear. And this was a kind of a source of consternation among these students. They didn't like the fact that they couldn't wear hats. Also, keep in mind that the Newtown kids didn't have lockers, so whatever they wore to school, they had to carry it around with them all day. So if you wore a hat to school, you got to take it off and carry it around, stick it in your bag, whatever. Couldn't wear it in class. So if a kid came to my class wearing a hat, you got to take the hat off. You got to take the hat off. I don't want to hear it. And they would argue, I don't want to hear it. That's the rule. That's the rule. You got to take the hat off. So there's one kid, I don't remember his name. We'll call him Bobby. Comes to class dressed like this. Okay. So I walk into the room, and there's Bobby, full ski outfit. Uh, and he's sitting in his seat, which was over by the wall, away from the windows, by the doors. He's sitting about the fourth seat back, so he's in my field of vision, just about no matter where I am in the room. And you got to make these snap judgments when you teach, so here's the kid, and he's dressed clearly inappropriately for being in a classroom, just like that picture. He's got the ski parka on with the hood up, tied, and the ski goggles on. And I knew instantly what he wanted me to do. He wanted me to tell him to take off the goggles and take down the hood, in which case the argument would ensue. And I got to hand it to Bobby. He kind of worked this out pretty well. He was going to catch me on a loophole and establish how ridiculous the no hat rule was by saying, hey, I don't take down the hood. It's not a hat. You're not allowed to wear hats. It doesn't say anything about hoods. So I got my hood on. I'm not taking it down. And the goggles, this is, well, you're wearing glasses. A lot of people wear glasses. There's no rule against that. So he wanted to have this confrontation with me. No, there'll be no confrontation. I said nothing to him. But I should point out that the classrooms at Newtown and at every public school I was in were kept incredibly hot. The heat it was like there was no thermostat. The heat would just pour in all day long. And the rooms just got hotter and hotter and hotter. And so any room I taught in, I always walked over to the windows and opened the window in the front from the bottom, depending on how cold it was outside, would determine, how far I opened it, just to get some air, or else it was ridiculously hot. And the reason for that, by the way, is this. Here's the bureaucratic thinking. Your heating oil budget, or for Newtown, it was your heat coal budget. Newtown in the late 1980s was still being heated by coal. Anyway, that budget was determined on how much you used the previous year. So if you want to make sure you always had enough either heating oil or, in the case of Newtown, coal to heat the building, you had to use a lot of it. So it was just wasted. Got the heat on, people got windows open. In any event, the classroom was ungodly hot. So I didn't open the window that day. No. Oh, Bobby, you're going to sit there and you are going to marinate in your own perspiration because I am not touching the window. So he's kind of confused why I didn't say anything. He didn't go the way he thought it was going to go. So I'm teaching my lesson and I'm looking over at Bobby. And after a few minutes, you could see rivulets of sweat just starting to roll down his cheeks and roll down his forehead, what was exposed anyway that you could see. So he must have been sweating like a pig underneath all this. Toward the end of the period, 40-minute period. So toward the end of the period, I look over and you could see the goggles beginning to fog up, from the bottom going up to the top. So this kid was just like in a sauna. So as soon as the bell rings, I mean, Bobby bolts out of the room, I guess, to get that stuff off. And next day, no parka, no goggles. He was back to wherever, no hat on, no nothing. So that was Bobby and the ski goggles. Another day, my second year at Newtown, I have an afternoon class, and there's like a ruckus in the hallway. This is the last period, and there's a lot of whatever, something's going on in the hallway. So I go out to see what's going on in the hallway, and what I see are about 10 boys in their underwear, no shirts, no pants. They're just wearing their underwear. They're little tighty whities or their boxer shorts. They're in their underwear, and they're horsing around. I said, "Hey, what in the world are you guys doing?" I said, "Oh, we're on the wrestling team." "Oh, okay. What in the world are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, we have a match this afternoon, so we have to get weighed in at the nurse's office." The nurse's office was at the end of the hallway that my classroom was in. So I said, "Oh, okay." So I tell you what, either go into the nurse's office and get weighed and then put your clothes on and leave, or Go put your clothes on, wait for the nurse to call you in, and when you go inside the office, then you take your clothes off and get on the scale. But in any event, you can't be out here in the hallways half naked. Oh, okay, we're sorry, we're sorry. So they go and they do. But that was what? You never know what you're gonna find. Now, August Martin was another public school I worked in. As I mentioned, it was an all black public school. Terrific kids. Newtown, the kids were terrific as well. Even Bobby with the goggles. He was a great kid. So one of my students comes in and he's dressed in a beautiful. He's dressed in a suit, tie, sharp. I say, hey, forget his name, Johnny. We'll call him Johnny. What's with the suit? And he said, well, he says, I got a job interview. He was a junior, I believe. He says, I got a job interview after school today, so I wanted to wear a suit to the interview. And I look at him, and he's got the price tag hanging off the I don't know if it was off the bottom of the jacket or off the sleeve. I said, Johnny, you got the price tag on the suit. You got to take that off. He says, oh no, that's the style. We buy new clothes. We like to leave the price tags on. And I remember kids like with hats with the price tag hanging off, although they couldn't wear the hat in class. But in any event, I said, Johnny, you can't go to a job interview with a price tag on your suit. I mean, the person that's interviewing you is gonna think that either you stole the suit or that you're planning to wear it to the job interview and then return it. Either way, it doesn't. It's not a good idea. He says, oh, I never thought of that. I said, well, yeah. So he took the price tag off and he went off on his interview. I think I don't remember if he got the job or not. He probably did. He was a very good student and he was a really nice young man. So uh, after August Martin, I go back to Townsend Harris. And Townsend Harris High School, again, New York City Public High School, had a very minimal dress code. But the dress code at Townsend Harris, unlike at August Martin or at Newtown, was very strictly enforced. Oh yeah, there was a group at Townsend Harris that would enforce the dress code. Uh, Jack booted thugs. This group, and they would terrorize the school. Uh, Here you see the poor young man that you're going to see in this picture. We don't know what happened to this young man. You could see he was arrested by the feared Townsend Harris High School fashion police. Yes, there were fashion police at Townsend Harris. In fact, I was teaching a senior class, and there were only two in the picture, but there were three fashion police who burst into my room, and it took me by surprise. And oh God, who are they going to go after now? They're going to drag somebody out of my classroom and lock them up? I didn't know. And they're kind of circling me, of all people. And they don't arrest me, but they give me a summons from the fashion police, me. And I had to appear in their lair, which was I think it was in the photography room or something, the newspaper office, photography room, something. And so I went up there later in the afternoon. It was three senior girls who were the fashion police. So I went up there thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to pay a fine or something. And I wasn't even clear why I was given this summons. Might have had something to do with my sweater vest, but I don't know. In any event, I go in and they signal me to come back over here, and they take me into the dark room, like the photography dark room, and they start giving me kisses, Hershey's kisses. This was this was a Halloween stunt in 1997. Perhaps the best. I mean, of all the Halloween costumes that I've kind of seen over the years, the fashion police was certainly one of the best, one of the best ones. Uh, Kids at Townsend Harris love to dress up on Halloween. And I remember one young man, also a senior, comes into my class on Halloween. He was dressed like, I think it was just like Dracula. Very elaborate makeup, the whole outfit, really elaborate. I personally didn't really do it. I'm not a dressed up for Halloween type guy. And I told him that, hey, your costume is really great. I said, but I don't really dress for Halloween. He says, wait a minute. He looks at me. He says, wait a minute. Oh, he says, I could see the costume you're in. I said, what are you talking about? The costume. He says, you're George Costanza. Now, personally, I don't see it, but many people have. In fact, my daughter Amanda described me to her. I think it was her sorority sisters as a cross between Tony Soprano and George Costanza, which is kind of an interesting mix. It always gets big. I've used that for these. You're in a big group, new people, and you do these icebreaker exercises. So I always tell that story because it's easy and people laugh. So we move on from there. So in any event, years later, it would had to have been a good 5 or 6 years later. I run into this kid. I forget his name. Uh, Super nice kid. One of the smartest kids I've ever encountered. So he's up on the St. John's camp. Must be more than 6 years. Maybe it's 7 or 8 years later. He's up on the St. John's campus, and he's delivering a lecture, some physics, chemistry. I forget which. So we're talking, and I reminded him of the Halloween all those years ago, where he said that, oh yeah, you're dressed as George Costanza, and this kid doesn't miss a beat. He just looks right at me and he says, and I see you're still in costume. So the George Costanza comparisons have been made many times. Now, at Jericho High School, you also had the situation where you had the, no uniform certainly, and the dress code was fairly lax. I mean, the kids could pretty much dress any way they wanted to, and they did, but they normally there was no, I don't remember any real issues with dress code. However, in my classroom, like every other classroom, it was hot. The heat just keeps pouring in. So I always kept the window open. In those days, I had one classroom, room 266 was my room. And so I always kept the window open a little bit in talking about like February, it's cold outside. I always kept the window open a little bit near where I was standing, so at least I would get some cool air, and it would help to cool the whole room off a little bit. And there was this girl. This was I believe it was a junior American history class. There was this girl that would come to class in the middle of the winter dressed like it was, July. And I can understand why she did it because the building was so hot. But she'd be wearing, shorts, short shorts, and a skimpy little t-shirt, which is fine in July, but in February it's not so good. And she would complain to me that the room was cold. It's cold because I had a window open a little bit. So she'd complain, it's freezing in here, she would say. And so finally one day I said, look, maybe you should wear more clothes to class, And she looks right at me and she says, maybe you should wear less clothes. And the class is like, what she just said. She wear less clothes. And I could tell by the look on her face. As those words were exiting her mouth, she realized, no, that's not going to sound right. But then she said it. And then after that point, did she wear more clothes? No. I certainly didn't wear less clothes. And she never complained about the temperature in the room again. So that was at Jericho. And then I'm going to digress a little bit because I also taught, many years college classes like at St. John's University, and then the last several years I've been teaching at Suffolk County Community College. And one day I had a kid show up to class at Suffolk Community College, looking just like this. this was a Sunday morning class. The first course I taught at Suffolk County Community College was Sunday mornings from 10 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. And a kid came in dressed like that. What do you do? I just ignored him. It wasn't Halloween. This was the spring semester. This was like in March. And so I got the wizard, sitting in sitting in class. The other students in the class didn't pay him any mind at all. But these students were older, the kids that come in and taking classes at the community college on a Sunday. For the most part, they were 25 and up. This kid was young. He looked like he was right out of high school. So he had the wizard and just a kind of an odd fashion statement. And it was only that one time. He never came back dressed as a wizard uh, to class. Uh, Now, this morning, before I started to make this video, I was reading Newsday, and I came across this, and I thought that was quite serendipitous, since I'll be talking about this afternoon, and here is this little piece of a read. It's a reader's letter to the editor lamenting about the way teachers dress, and he's certainly correct in that teacher fashion has evolved over time. My personally, I dressed according to the school that I was in. And when I was in a school where kids had to wear, the boys had to wear jackets and ties, I wore a jacket and tie. Never wore a suit, but I wore, jacket and tie certainly. Uh, when I got to Newtown, I started wearing first couple of days there. I was wearing jacket and tie, and I realized that I was like one of the few people wearing a jacket and tie. So you're able to dress down. So I started absolutely dressing down, wearing golf shirts and slacks, or even wearing jeans. Never wore a t-shirt, but certainly much more relaxed. The same thing was true at Townsend Harris. But one kind of a staple that I've had throughout the years was the sweater vest. You can't get a more functional piece of clothing for a well-dressed man than the sweater vest. It's a sweater, but doesn't have sleeves, so you don't get so hot when you're in the sweater vest in those hot schools. Uh, and then lastly, I had a student at Jericho High School. Very smart kid. Grace Mock was her name. I believe she's now a senior at Duke, or she might have just graduated. And she told me, she said her career goal is to take my job. She wanted to be the social science research teacher at Jericho High School. That's what I taught my several last few years, was social science research. So she wanted to take my job, and so much so that on Twin Day, schools have these spirit weeks where you dress different, supposed to dress pajama day, whatever. Twin Day, and so she came to me, says, "Mrs. Scarnati, we're gonna be twins. This is what I want you to wear." And what you wanted me to wear was what I always wore. but but there's Grace. Uh, so I thought that was was very cute of Grace. So the sweater vest became a more or less defining symbol of Mr. Scarnati in the classroom. Okay, that is a quick look. Well, I guess not so quick. Quick look at fashion throughout the years. I'm gonna make a part 4 next week, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to focus on. I have a number of ideas, and we will see at that time. So have a great weekend, and remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share the video if you think there are people that might enjoy listening to it. All right, so long.